You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name is Arya Whitner, and this is your next heavy update for Wednesday, July 26th, 2017. Thank you all for listening. We start this week with the most recent departure from TNA to NXT, kind of. Well, I mean, if you consider recent to be about, 4 years ago, if you even remember she was there. Lady Tapa debuted in NXT tonight. She was, I believe, on Gut Check. I think she was Gail Kim's enforcer for a couple months. She didn't last long. However, she was there, and she was there only slightly longer than her match tonight went. She took on Ember Moon, and Tapa came out strong and fast, but Moon quickly turned things into her advantage, using, among other things, a tornado vertical suplex, and she picked up the win in less than 2 minutes with the Eclipse. Ember grabbed the mic after the match and declared that she wanted Asuka at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. She announced that she is standing right here, and she will give Asuka all that she desires in regards of a worthy challenger and worthy competition. She is not afraid, and she will defeat the undefeated Empress of Tomorrow, closing up by asking Asuka if she was ready for Ember Moon. Roderick Strong went to Twitter after he lost his title shot and told Bobby Roode that, title or no title, that this was not the last he would see of Roderick Strong. We had 2 Aleister Black video packages on this show. Neither of them actually led to anything. They didn't lead to an announcement. They didn't lead to a match. It was just 4 minutes of time that needed to be filled. And what better way to fill it than with Aleister Black video packages? Hey, I'm not complaining. Up next, the undefeated, undisputed, reigning, defending NXT Tag Team Champions, the Authors of Pain, were scheduled to destroy Timothy Bumpers and David Ramos. However, as wrestling gets sometimes, it never quite got that far. Nikki Cross met Authors of Pain on the ramp and stood in front of them as Alexander Wolf and Killian Dane stormed through the crowd and into the ring, destroying the Authors of Pain's intended opponents. Akam and Razor stomped to the ring afterwards, and we had a brawl between the 4 men. The Sanity duo got a brief flurry, but ultimately the World Tag Team Champions of the World of Florida stood tall, making Dane and Wolf slink off. Wolf did cackle at them from the ramp, but this one, ladies and gentlemen, is far from over. The Street Profits cut another Snapchat promo. For the first time, we actually got names for them. I'm sure if you read the various NXT Live reports, you already know their names. But for those who don't, it is Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins. Dawkins, you might recall, was the NXT jobber who, for some reason, always wore 2 headbands during his matches. And I don't know if he still does that. We'll find out soon, I guess. Now, speaking of things you might recall, about 2 months ago, Andrade Cien Almas lost to random newcomer Cesar Bononi and didn't give one crap about it until last week when Cesar Bononi made his epic return to lose to No Way Jose. And you might recall Almas beat up Bononi until No Way Jose returned to the ring to run off both Andrade Cien Almas and Thea Trinidad, who now has the name of Selena Vega. That led to a confrontation between Jose and Vega earlier today when Jose was leaving his car to come to the arena. Vega said she admired Jose, but unfortunately for him, he got involved in her and Almas's business, and he cannot dance around the fire he just set. Now, just curious, and I know I've mentioned this a number of times with different people over the weeks, why was No Way Jose even coming to the arena in the first place with his bags, with his gear, when he had no scheduled match or promo time? Speaking of Cesar Bononi, he was in the next match, going one-on-one with Velveteen Dream. You might recall that once again, Bononi won 2 months ago. He lost last week, and that was enough, I guess, to pay his dues, because he now has a theme song and Titantron to come out to. This match also went less than 2 minutes. If you're noticing a trend here. But Bononi looked really good in those 2 minutes. This man, I don't know what he can do with more than 2 minutes, but he looked really impressive here. He has great size, he's great power, he's a heck of an athlete, he throws a hell of a drop kick, and despite all that, Velveteen Dream dropped him with a rolling Death Valley driver and the cringeworthy Purple Rainmaker for the pin. In case you're curious, the Purple Rainmaker is the diving elbow drop off the top rope. Kayla Braxton tried to interview Velveteen Dream. In prior weeks, Velveteen Dream has refused to do interviews because the backstage ambiance wasn't correct, or Kayla was bugging him before while he was trying to leave the arena. This time, apparently the ambiance inside the arena is nice and good. However, the fans are just too ugly for him to cut a promo in front of. So Dream refused to cut a promo in front of our very ugly fans. William Regal was backstage and made the Asuka Ember Moon match official, so they will get it on in 3 weeks at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. And then we're joined by the number one contender to the NXT Championship, Mr. Drew McIntyre. And it is official. He will be facing Bobby Roode in Brooklyn at NXT TakeOver with his shot at the gold. And Drew announced that he does not go backwards. He's not here to concentrate on his previous failures. He said it wasn't until he was gone from WWE when he woke up and realized that he needed to not just be the hardest worker in the room, he needed to be the hardest worker in the entire damn world. He grew and became more successful. Every company he went to became bigger and better, in part due to his hard work. And that hard work, that commitment, brought him back here to NXT. He said that everyone here in NXT are equals, and they all walk side by side, arm in arm, everyone but one. And that one is Bobby Roode. And when Drew looks into Roode's eyes, he sees a look of entitlement. And he announces that this is not Bobby Roode's NXT. This is all the fans' NXT. And McIntyre got the entire crowd onto their feet as he announced that Roode is not NXT, but we are NXT. Next week, Bobby Roode will be here to reply to Drew McIntyre. Plus, Johnny Gargano will finally return to the ring as he faces off with Raul Mendoza. And during the main event, they announced that Asuka will finally return to the ring next week. And speaking of Raul Mendoza, he actually cut a nice little 15, 20-second promo saying that he's been training just as hard as Johnny Gargano. And maybe next week is not so much about Johnny Gargano, but it'll be about Raul Mendoza. Main event time. Hideo Itami one-on-one with Kassius Ohno. This match, if you've been following along, has been set up for weeks and weeks, where Hideo Itami's got quite the attitude after losing to Bobby Roode in Chicago at TakeOver, and Kassius Ohno has been trying unsuccessfully to get Itami out of this funk. Finally, Ohno got tired of listening to Itami's griping, and here we go. They always say that in pro wrestling, you will hit your friends harder than the people you don't like. With that in mind, these two must be the best of friends. Ohno and Itami did not appear to be pulling anything for the first few minutes, as the sound of flesh on flesh echoed throughout the arena as Itami finally took over by knocking Ohno out of the ring into the floor. They chilled out a little bit afterwards as a sports entertainment match broke out. Itami got the heat until diving off the top rope and falling into a chop from Ohno. Ohno literally ran wild with a series of clotheslines and a cyclone boot to the jaw. Itami battled back and hit a nice corner dropkick to Ohno. He went for a go-to-sleep, but Ohno got out of it and hit a big boot. Ohno went for the rolling elbow, but Itami, how do I say this nicely? Itami kicked a field goal with Ohno's groin and was disqualified. Itami was quite angry that he'd be disqualified for this action and snapped, destroying Ohno with kick after kick after kick. Itami laid him out with 2 different go-to-sleeps and appeared to be leaving when he returned to the ring, dragged Ohno outside the ring, and dropped him face-first on the ring steps. What has happened to the Hideo Itami we all knew and love? Maybe we'll find out next week. But as for now, that's going to do it for NXT. I want to thank you all for listening. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you again in 7 days.
You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.